We've been on the go for 2.5 years now. We first decided that we wanted to organise as a women's organisation in 2012, and the reason we did it was because looking at panels, looking at politics, looking at UK politics especially, we were aware of the fact that women are underrepresented. Panels on TV shows, the newspaper editors, men, political editors, mainly men in Scotland, and we thought that an organisation which aimed to do a couple of things. One was identifying that women are less likely to vote for independence than men, and to kind of see why that is, to look at some of the reasons around it. And the other one was to ensure that women's voices were represented. So this is about my 78th public meeting in the last 2 years, and it's actually the closest to home I've actually been. I went to school just up there at St Columba's, and I also went to Woodmill to do higher drama when I was in 6th year, because St Columba's didn't offer that, and I've never used it since, but I really enjoyed doing that, and going to both schools, and there's a bit of rivalry, and then it was like crossing the barriers. It was great, and a really great experience. So coming here tonight is good because it feels familiar. But I have been in various other places. I've been in Skye, and I've been down to Tarbert, and also to Tarbert. Who knew that there were two different places an hour and a half apart? Yeah. Well, no, I did, but I didn't read the email correctly. What the email actually said was, come to Tarbert. I thought I was going to Tarbert, which had a train station. Tarbert does not have a train station. I also set the sat-nav for Skye. It takes you the quickest way. It doesn't take you over the Skye Bridge. So when I got to the roundabout and it said, at the next roundabout, take the second exit and get on the boat. Oh. As the back of the Calmac ferry left, there wasn't another one for 2 hours. So, this independence referendum has taken me all across Scotland, and it's great, and I've been part of panels with some people that I've admired from afar for years. Didn't sleep for 2 days because I was on a panel with Jim Sillars. I was really nervous, and then of course he was absolutely brilliant, and some of us might not even have needed to be there. It was in Kilmarnock, and he was so inspiring. But I've also been on panels with people who before this hadn't even been involved in politics, hadn't done anything. And the referendum, if it's done one thing, has inspired people to talk about politics again, to start imagining what kind of country we want to be in. And whether that's a yes or a no vote in September, I think Scotland has been fundamentally changed for the better, because people are more aware, they're asking questions, and they're questioning what type of politics that we have here, and whether or not the deal that we have is the best deal that we could have. So in September, it's really about power. And it's about what you want to do with the power, and whether you think that the power is best to sit in Edinburgh or to sit in Westminster, and whether you think we can make the best decisions for our future here in Scotland, or if we're happy for those decisions to be made for us. So, Women for Independence, all around the country, we've now got 47 local groups. We are probably a pain in the hookies of editors, newspaper editors, programme editors, because we're constantly at them to ensure that they have gender balance on panels, and I think that's really important going forward. Women are hugely underrepresented in the union, and we are the target of the vast majority of the cuts, the austerity measures that have come from Westminster in the last few years. The Poverty Alliance, if we're looking at independent facts and figures to back this up, the Poverty Alliance, for example, released a study just 2 weeks ago which said that £15 billion had been cut from wages, pensions, welfare, etc., and that 74% of those have been cut from women's incomes. So women really do need to have a voice in this referendum, and I'm here, and I'm delighted we've got a gender balance panel, and I'm here to ensure that there is women's representation. Thank you.
Probably women doing speeches.
That's not my stock speech, I promise.
My name's Pete Bell, or Peter A. Bell, if you follow me online, which is where I do most of my campaigning. I do these public meetings every once in a while, just to interact with other human beings rather than sit at the computer all the time. I get a bit of a shut-in. I can't actually say that I ever got involved in politics. There wasn't a point where I got involved in politics. I've been involved in politics all my life, or politics has been part of my life for as long as I can remember. I'm also local, fairly local. Used to live several places round about here. I went to school in Dunfermline, Illinois. I went to Dunfermline High, possibly a couple of years ahead of Natalie. I was actually brought up in there's a couple of wee villages, Lincoln and Charleston. I was brought up there, but lived in Dunfermline for about 30 years. Moved to Perth in 1992, and I didn't have to bother too much about sat-nav or ferries or anything. I just got the bus. One of my earliest memories is sitting in a school room in Charleston, tiny little village, Charleston, only 200 or 300 residents. And it was an infant school in an old farm building, which I remember well because it was absolutely freezing in the winter. There were two of these big pot-bellied stoves which gave off great heat so long as you were no further than a foot away from them. Unfortunately, there was a fire guard round them which was about 3 feet away from them, so we just never got warm. And one of the things that I remember, a few things that I remember about that, one of the things was being wrapped on freezing cold knuckles with a thing like a policeman's truncheon. It's actually, I learned later, it was a clerk's rule. It was made of ebony, and it was for clerks drawing lines in ledgers, but it was round and it looked for all the world like a policeman's truncheon. And it might have been, it might as well have been made of solid steel, cast iron, because there was very little give in it at all. Not nearly as much give as there were in a 6-year-old's frozen fingers. I can tell you, it hurt like hell. And most often, these raps on the knuckles were for saying things like, aye, or I dinna ken. We actually used to get beaten for speaking in our normal tongue, and just the normal way that we've been brought up to speak. That stuck in my mind. I was only 6, 7 years old, maybe 8 years old. I think we went to the next school, the big school, when we were 9. So I was very young, but it made an impression on me. Now another thing that sticks in my mind from that time was this huge wall map. It was on the wall behind the teacher's desk. Miss Marshall, by the way, God rot her soul, vicious little bitch. And on this was huge. Well, it probably wasn't that big. I was 6, you know? But it looked huge to me. And it was the British Isles. And there was England, and there's this massive colour. Yellows and pinks and blues and greens, and every town and village marked, every road, every church, every graveyard, every railway, every little pathway, everything. It was just this mass of population. And then you got further north and it all sort of faded out until you got to the Scottish border. North of the Scottish border, the map was white. There was 2 railway lines marked, the East Coast and the West Coast, one which went up as far as Wick. The Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee, Aberdeen, Perth, because Perth was a major railway town, Wick. About half a dozen towns were marked on that map. And that was it. That was Scotland. And I remember asking the teacher why that was. And I remember well her telling me, because Scotland was not important enough. And that made an impression on me. So I never really got involved with politics. I was involved with politics even from that age. Politics was part of my life. So it was only natural that later on I should get more formally involved. I'm a member of the SNP. I've been a member of the SNP on and off for many years. I go in the huff occasionally and tear up my car. The buggers have started making the things out of plastic now, so you can't do that. You can't do your flinch the same way that you used to. But I think the SNP has been a great thing for Scotland. I think this referendum, for which we have the SNP to thank, let us not forget, this referendum has been the best thing for Scotland. And I just decided 2 years ago that I had to give up the little business that I was running and making a total arse of, and concentrate on doing whatever I could to bring about a yes vote. Mostly that's involved campaigning online, Facebook, Twitter, blogs, a Scoop-It site, and occasionally coming out to talk to nice people like you. It's good to be here, and I'm ready to answer whatever questions you've got. Thank you.
Right, I'm Debbie Figures. I'm Labour for Independence. I'm a Labour Party member. I'm a United Union member. I'm a Unite activist, and I'm going against the Green. We come to meetings to try and explain why us as Labour members are voting yes. We're voting yes because we want the Labour Party reformed. We want it to become the Labour Party it should be. Politics in my life were a bit sketchy. When I was younger, I do remember politics quite vividly as that bleep on the telly, that women doing things to Scotland, because I was a Thatcher's child and grew up with it. I then, when I got older, kind of lost my way with politics. I didn't quite understand why we were going and what we were doing. My mum still always voted Labour, and I was told that's what I was to vote when I was 18, was to make sure I voted Labour. When I got older, I did look into what I was doing, and obviously I got quite active within the union, so getting active within the union brings Labour card with it, to be honest, and it still does to this day. I know we're kind of contesting that now, but it does still to this day bring a Labour card with it. My Labour card is easy to rip up, can I say, and it has been quite a few times. I've been warned that I'm not allowed to rip it up again until September, and I'm being held to that. I'm quite angry just now with what the Labour Party are doing. I don't agree with anything at the moment of what they have been doing towards the referendum. I don't understand why they've joined the right-hand side of the parties. I don't understand why they're supporting Trident being renewed. I don't understand a lot of things. That hence brought me to reading a lot of things, and it took me from being a very soft yes to the extreme yes into coming out and campaigning with the group. So I'm still here, another year on, doing public meetings, obviously, still working within the union, which has actually supported us in our role of doing this as well by coming out and saying that they were staying neutral and not making a decision, because quite a lot of Unite activists actually are yes votes. So there was quite a lot of discrepancy between Labour Party activists and Unite activists that were Labour Party members but wanted the Labour Party to be more of a Labour Party rather than joining the right elite to gain Westminster, which is what they're basically doing at the moment. I've basically been taken over by this campaign. Can't wait to September. Might see my children. Don't vaguely know what ages they are anymore because I leave my work and I come straight to meetings like this. I think one of them's 14-ish, comes out of the room occasionally, one's 5 and one's 3. They speak to me in the morning before I leave for work. They, I hope, will be the reason that I'm doing this. It's for their future I'm doing this, and everybody that I have come across, apart from my own Labour Party constituency group, have been extremely good with me for doing it. Douglas Alexander isn't quite happy, he's barred me from my meetings, but that's not a disaster because it was more like a Tory gathering anyway. So that's basically me, and I will answer whatever I can answer tonight, and I'll pass you on to this young chap.
My name is Andrew Cannell, and I'm involved with the Scottish Socialist Party. the branch secretary of the party here in Stirling and volunteer as well. And first of all, just thank you all for coming tonight. I know the World Cup semi-finals on, and well, personally, I can hope we get finished early enough to catch the second half. But so I do appreciate your time coming tonight. It's hopefully going to be quite informative and enjoyable. I'd also like to thank Radical Independence and Young Lewis over there for inviting me along to speak. Hopefully I can answer as many questions as possible. And since the rest of the panel have informed you of where they're from and what made them get involved in politics, I may as well do the same thing. I'm just from up the road in Town Hill, and I went to Queen Anne High School, and I first got involved in politics really because I look at the world and see like there's a lot of things wrong. I don't know if you know this, but every single day 22,000 kids die from preventable diseases, and this is in the 21st century. This is when we've got unbelievable resources at our expense, and the richest 1% of the world's population sickeningly have the same amount of wealth as the poorest 3.5 billion people. If that doesn't make you feel like angry to the bones, then I don't know what will. But that's what motivated me to first get involved in politics, and then I went on to join the Scottish Socialist Party, which I've been very active within. Meet people every week, try and persuade them to vote yes, and the benefits it'll have for working class people across Scotland and in the rest of the UK, and it'll also set an example to people struggling for their independence around the world, from Catalonia in Spain to elsewhere. But I'd just like to say I hope I can answer as many of your questions as possible, and I'm quite proud to be here representing the Scottish Socialist Party.
My name is Susan Archibald. I'm a disability rights campaigner, and I've been doing this for about 14 and a half years now. How can I say? I can't really say I first got involved in politics, because politics runs your life. Can everything about the decisions that other people make seriously run your life. Can enough seriously go to say I didn't belong to any party. I work with every single party that does something beneficial for my peers. If they're doing something that's good, I support them. If they're doing something that's bad, then I'm sorry, but I'm coming to chat their door, and they ken I'm coming because I take all my pals. But you have to, Ken, because there's so many. Listen to Natalie and all that going on about why they got involved for equality. Well, I never knew what it was like. I would have been the first person to go out there and open my door and help somebody that had a disability, but until it actually comes to your door, you really didn't ken the first thing about it. And I've seriously got to say I'll never forget what it's like to be that disabled person. I'm really quite lucky because I can still work, and I go out there and fight and try and change folks' lives, help them cope with their conditions, their disability, for either get back into work or go back to university, college, whatever they can do, or get involved in the local community groups or disabled organisations. But I'm damn sure I'll stand in front of all the folk that can't work, and that's where my voice comes in. Can I speak for all the people that can't speak for themselves? And that's not just people that have disabilities. Lots of people in life can't speak up for themselves and they need a voice. So you'll see me sitting outside the likes of the Red Cross, the Salvation Army shops that are meant to be absolutely fantastic, but they're adding to the problems right now because they're running the workfare programmes where all the folk with disabilities have been forced to go there for to donate so much of their time. Half the folk can't go out of their bed. You're talking on an average between 50 and 70 people a week are dying that have been declared fit to work with the likes of Atos. And it's all right saying the government put letters out stopping the contracts with Atos, but you'll get Capita or another organisation coming along and doing the very same thing. And it isn't Atos, it's no Capita, it's the descriptors that the government made in the first place, because each organisation will go with the descriptors and we'll watch it build up, the media benefits ground and scum, people getting spat on the street, and this really happens. This is the folk that I work with. In my ordinary life, I go out and speak at conference events for to raise money for to come back in, because I support everybody that's got a disabled person, everybody that has a disability. I started off with helping them with their employment appeals, lodging tribunals, helping them with their capability hearings, but when welfare reform came in, I ran back forward to the Parliament to work with MPs, the baronesses, the dames, for the challenge, And even though we get amendments, it didn't make any difference, because they took it back through the Parliament and done it with the financial privilege, so we're still crapped on it. And let me assure you, it's not just the coalition that crapped on my peers. Every single party have crapped on my peers. So they've been hit with welfare reform. You're talking about folk are losing their benefits. The sanctions that are happening right now, you've got loads, thousands of single parents that have been sanctioned, not a penny. And it used to be that you had to have enough money to live on. Nobody cares. Along with people being put through their sanctions, you're talking about half of them are going through PIP assessments. Now, again, if you're long term, if they say that you'll not be you'll not have your disability living allowance changed until PIP comes in October. But loads of folk for the last 3 years that only get it for a year, 2 years, or 3 years, they're already going through that. 12 to 18 months, people are waiting for it to be reassessed. In the interim term, their cars tear away from their door. If they had a carer, they're losing their carer's allowance. If they had services going in to help them, their services were drawn. Their blue badge is lost. On the top, Ken, it's not just the fact of what's happening with welfare reform. All the local authorities are realigning. Realigning, I like that word, realigning services to suit their bloody selves. Ken, people that maybe had 10 hours or 12 hours of care might find themselves with 1.5 hours. What can they do in 1.5 hours? But let's be realistic. I've been going around and helping folks through their local authorities, because where they've been paying for an hour a day for if somebody to come in, maybe get them up, get them ready, somebody to make their dinner or something like that, they're lucky if they're getting 12 minutes. So where's the other 18 minutes that they should have for the half hour in the morning and half hour at night? Didn't you see anybody coming along and saying, we'll give you that back, Folk just didn't seem to understand how bad it is, Can food banks aren't the answer? You've got to get a voucher in the first place to go to a bloody food bank, and loads of folk are too proud to go to a food bank. They didn't want to be. Stick my denier. Ken, we've got David Cameron, we've got everybody twitching at the curtains as that person working next door. Loads of folk have hidden disabilities that you can't see. But other folk just look at them and think that it's alright, It isn't alright. I'd be the first to say maybe folk have abused the blue badge scheme. Ken, maybe they've jumped in and out somebody else's car that they're meant to be driving for them. But no, everybody that can jump out a car and run into Asda has a benefit. They might have that car on behalf of somebody else. Ken, there's loads of confusion out there. Some people do mismanage money. Some folk have mental health problems and they can't manage their money. Can you imagine what's going to happen when universal credit comes in? It's already started. Folk are starving. I was in a wife's house last week that had 1 tin of beans and 2 tin of peas. 3 bairns sanctioned because their bus was late. That's how bad society is, and folk didn't realise that, Other folk didn't have a fridge. Ken, folk are saying, no. In the winter, absolutely just despicable, Ken, their fridges are off. They've got a cooker, they've got a microwave. It takes 2 minutes or 5 minutes to heat your dinner in a microwave. They can afford that. They can't afford the 30 minutes, 40 minutes every day saying, eat healthy, like where would they get money to buy it? Ken, obesity's gone up, of course it is. They're eating shit. No, sorry. And it's not their fault. Ken, the most vulnerable folk in society, and that's that as the director, is the poverty lines, and we do a huge amount of work, but gingerbread in Fife, the amount of single parents, not just in Fife, right across the country, it's like eugenics. People are being wiped out, absolutely wiped out, and it's pick on that person, Ken. The government's doing the right thing, they're actually winning. They're winning because they're dividing. Right, notice the Romanians, they're all coming to give our benefit. Last year it was the Polish, they were coming to do this. If you look at the actual answers, it's not right. And people are jumping on that and believing it. Ken, what about years ago when we grew up, when we were on the bairns in this country, and our families needed the jobs? They went to Italy for work, they went to Spain for work. What's the difference? What's the difference for to go for there, for to get work and come back home after 6 months? It's the same thing. Ken, if you were living in a poor country and you had the opportunity for it, how bad is it that they've got to lie under a truck for to get it here? Ken, I'm not saying that everything that's in place for people that come here is right, but Ken, I was one of the folk that got up out my bed in the middle of the night and went to Glasgow. Before Christmas they decided they were giving them all, I thought it was their birthday. Ken, what's happening? We didn't usually get parcels like this. Loads of parcels, sleeping bags, everything, their doors all got chapped in the red flats, and they're going, what's happening? Aye. See, in January, whole different ball game, eh? New government got in, changed the legislation, and they're all there at the Home Office in their vans and everything, kicking them out, parents and everything at their bed in the middle of the night, putting them out in the street, changing the locks on them. Now what do? Go and stand in a queue for to get half a loaf of bread. Half a loaf of bread. They didn't get benefits. Loads of people going about, oh, immigrants come to this country. What about the health service? Where do you get the specialist doctors and nurses? Our doctors and nurses come up in this country and they move, they emigrate to New Zealand, they emigrate to Australia for a better, quieter, easily moneyed life, a better way of living. We have fantastic doctors, but we can't train. Can the quality, the stuff that they can when they come from different countries, you walk into every hospital, that's who's running our health service. Without them, where would you be? Can I talk about the health service? Too many folk complain and forget to say thanks. And I'm not saying that everything that happens in every health board is absolutely fantastic. Far from it. Far from it. But we didn't have prescriptions. You didn't have man like that. There was only a minute percentage that actually paid for prescriptions anyway, so it's not a huge cost. If you have a serious condition or you have loads of different conditions and you have to take 10, 20, many folk rattle because they're taking thousands of pills every day. For every prescription it costs £8. That's not just for one. That will last you 3 months, but that's for each tablet. Get what I'm saying, eh? Where did they get the money? And I was one of the folk that used to work, ended up in no man's land because I couldn't get benefit, I couldn't get anything. So I was one of the folk that sat and about died in a room because I had to hide my prescriptions from my man because I couldn't afford to tell him that I needed these drugs. So I hid them. And I went cold turkey. It was the hardest time of my life. And that's how I fought for free prescriptions, because I never want folk to feel the amount of pain that folk feel. It shouldn't be right, eh? You talk about pensioners. How many pensioners died last year because they can't heat their houses? But how many of them also starved? I work with loads of folk. Their daughter's phone, their son's phones, are you alright? Of course they've got to say they're alright. But you've got telecare and that tenure that's become a babysit. It's alright in proportion if there's family in that gone about too. But loads of families are using that too as a babysitting service for the ken that their mother or their father moved for there. Didn't you see their families for weeks? They'll phone them and say, you alright? Oh, well, I'm already come today. And they'll not tell them that they're not alright, but they're dying inside because they've maybe lost their partner or they didn't have anybody to talk to anymore, eh? Loneliness kills. Seriously kills, eh? And we're living in a society that used to care, but we're living in a bullying state. We're living in a nanny state that dictates.
My daughter was in hospital last week. Her man got sent for her, and they think she'd make it through the night. And she got a letter at here in front of the tribunal, and she was lying in hospital. That's true.
The majority of folk that get letters for the tribunal service or ATOS
Her man got sent for her, and then she made it through the night. She got a letter, and she was in hospital. That's true.
As it's despicable. I could talk all night, but I'm really wanting to open up to questions.
If you have a question, you can stick your hand up and we'll hopefully get to you. If you can talk as loudly as possible and try and not make your question a speech with a question mark at the end, because you'll get that quite often. Was that?